Ben Riggs presents Reading D&D Aloud. Episode 67. This guy reviewed an RPG that doesn't exist, with Luke Gearing and Leo Hunt.
Greetings, listeners, once again to a podcast with no name. But it's a podcast where we have amazing conversations with tabletop role-playing game luminaries. And our first luminary this evening, this morning, or this day, depending on where you are, is Luke Gearing. Am I pronouncing that right? I should have asked beforehand.
Yeah, Luke Gearing. Yeah, it is exactly how you'd expect.
Luke Gearing is a remarkable voice in the tabletop role-playing game world. His work includes Acid Death Fantasy for Troika, the epic and greatly disturbing Gradient Descent for Mothership, and the Wages of Sin bounty book, which recently was funded on crowdfunding. His work is gritty, evocative, and, dare I say, delightfully lurid at times. Welcome, Luke.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the kind words. I was about to hit you when they said, "Oh, we've got luminaries." It's like, "Oh, when are they joining?" But you've missed the punch there.
This is America, man. We're all luminaries.
Okay, yeah, it's good to know.
Our second luminary today is Leo Hunt. Leo Hunt is a brilliant role-playing game designer. The second edition of Vaults of Vaarn just funded, and I backed it, but I am most intrigued by his adventure, The Shrike, which was nominated for an Emmy this year. I don't recall if it won. Did it win?
It did win, yes.
Congratulations, man.
Yeah, we got gold, so yeah, I'm pretty happy about that.
The back of the book describes, quote, a huge modular sandbox adventure setting in an abandoned fragment of hell, a colossal blade dedicated to punishing a nameless god. Welcome, Leo.
Thanks for having me on, Ben. I appreciate the invite and your early recording time as well for you. That's
yeah,
very kind.
Listeners, it is 6 a.m. here in Milwaukee, and I've already done my hair.
That's brutal. Yeah.
Well, I go right from here to I teach 7th and 8th grade, so 12, 13, 14-year-olds. I go from here right to a preschool parent meeting. So I am belted up and ready to run out the door with my 4-year-old after this. So, but that quote from the back of the Shrike brings me to a question that I hope is going to kick off a great conversation. I feel like OSR Adventures, and audience, if you don't know what OSR is, it's the old school revolution or old school renaissance, which attempts to bring the early lessons of role-playing games and make them flourish again in the 21st century. I feel like many OSR adventures have an implied setting. I would point again to that sentence from the back of the Shrike, and I'm just going to read it again, quote, a huge modular sandbox adventure setting in an abandoned fragment of hell, a colossal blade dedicated to punishing a nameless god, end quote. And you can feel free to disagree with this, gentleman, but I would ask the two of you, if you were going to define the implied setting of the OSR, how would you describe it?
I think it's a weird one because obviously, like the kind of the primary building block a lot of these things is like the location based adventure, and that can scale in size from like, oh, it's like a spooky house to like, oh, it's this entire setting. So you do some very interesting stuff where there's like a balancing act between like, can I just use this in my game versus, oh, there's some really cool unique shit happening here, and like the more cool unique stuff that you have going on, the harder it is to just drop into like a game that's being run. So I don't know if there's like certainly some defaults that you can make like reasonable assumptions around for like most games, but I don't know if it's necessarily the implied universal setting. Like,
disagree with me. I love it. Go for it.
Yeah, because it was like, for me, like the stuff that really like shit like the Shrike, right? Like, because you could drop that in anywhere despite it being a setting, because there's like the kind of the roots into the Shrike, which are listed out, so that can just be kind of like a pocket dimension. But then you have something else where it's like, oh, it's just a continent. Like, are you going to drop a whole continent into your game world to run it? Maybe, like if you're cool, maybe. But it's a lot tougher, right? It's a big ask for. Oh, I've assumed all these things are true about your campaign world. Can you just run that? Is that compatible? Sometimes the answer is no.
Yeah, this was definitely something I did have to think about specifically with this adventure. I mean, it depends what you're talking about with like the OSR, right? But I would slightly argue that there is a very weak implied setting. If we're arguing for like, say, I don't know, old school essentials, BX seems to be like the lingua franca at the minute, right? So there is some setting implied in the very core rules, right? Like even the fact that you can get a dwarf and an elf as a class, right? Or the equipment list has some like, I can't summon up the BX equipment list off the top of my head, but I think it includes stuff like silver, right? So you can assume that like silver daggers or something, so that you can assume that there's like werewolves exist from that equipment list, for example. So I think my although I agree that like the OSR as a whole is kind of too creatively heterodox to say that it has one implied setting. I do think it slightly rests on this very vague kind of like expectations that you get of what like baseline old school D&D is, which I think for me would be like the keep on the borderlands, like BX, the kind of it's kind of the medieval, but it's slightly Wild Westy when you actually dig into the social relationships, and there's a bunch of, humanoid-ish creatures lounging about that you're allowed to murder. Stuff like that is a setting, I think, although it's a very loose one. So I sometimes see the more creative quote unquote stuff as like either a reaction against that or kind of building on top of it. I don't know, it's an interesting question.
I think like because you have all like the encounter tables and stuff and like the base books, like whichever one you pick, and like if you go, okay, all of these are 100% true. These are the things that are there, right? You can do like there's someone who took the outdoor explorer, outdoor survival map, and like, oh, this is the setting. This is the setting of D&D. There is only one setting now, and that's like pretty cool because like there's a lot of weird assumptions there, and like you said, there's that kind of like wild westiness, post-apocalyptic nature going on. Whereas like none of these like lords in their little castles or whatever, like they don't belong to a larger authority than themselves, unless they do, because like the cleric's really interesting. Because like with name levels, you move up a church hierarchy, but there's no specified church. It's like, yeah, you believe in your own god, but you're all kind of part of the same church, maybe. You can have a lot of fun like pulling on that and tweaking it, I think. At least in some weird places. Like you can do like a fun like heterodox reading. Like I did a whole thing with like the cleric class isn't part of the main church. Like what if they're like specifically a heretic? You're like making your own church. You're almost like your own prophet, which then makes it really interesting because okay, you're specifically against the defined power structures in the world, and you can do a lot of fun stuff with that because then that's the reason you adventure. Especially clerics are weird; they don't quite fit in with the magic use and the fighter.
Yeah, I remember there's some sequence of blog posts like talking about the implied setting of like OD&D from its encounter tables, which are, I think as you said, actually really strange if you like assume that all of this stuff exists in one place, right? Like there's cavemen and dinosaurs alongside kind of like, Greek mythology and then goblins and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, that's a really quite strange world actually, like when you kind of explore the boundaries of it.
The cities as well are really fucking weird, where you're like more likely to meet like a fucking vampire or something than just like some peasants or whatever. And it's like, damn, these cities blow. This sucks. Why would I go here?
Vampire City, baby. I mean, yeah, it's Gonzo all the way down. It always has, it always has been like, and I'm both astronauts aiming a gun at each other. But yeah, it's no, it is an interesting one. I guess my argument is that even the baseline that you kind of expect it's going to be medieval-ish fantasy is kind of a setting, but then like obviously I think for me the interest in the OSR is like the people for me it's like people specific like weird settings that go a lot further than that in terms of like I don't know if you consider the Veins of the Earth a setting or like stuff like Through Eltan's Door or whatever, which are both I guess you could describe them as medieval, but like only in a very sort of loose sense. And they become quite idiosyncratic.
Sorry, Leo, what was the second work you mentioned after Veins of the Earth?
I was just thinking of like Through Eltan's Door. It's Ben Lawrence's the zines in the dream world, of which I think only a small amount has been published, but he writes quite a lot about it on his blog, and it's all.
I'm just gonna write that down.
Yeah, it's all pretty odd. Yeah, I say shout out to Benel. I love Cyan. It's one of my favorite like imaginary worlds in the wider blogosphere for sure.
It does a really good job of being its own thing that you can drop into any game world, because the whole
Mm,
like the kind of context is you find a magic door that takes you there, which
yeah.
means like you could just drop that in wherever, which there's a few kind of pocket dimension adventures around, which I think like work pretty good for this sort of thing, because yeah, you just drop it in, you don't need to worry.
Yeah, I think going back to my own work, yeah, these kind of concerns were absolutely on my mind when writing the Shrike because Joel basically wanted something for old school essentials, and I was kind of I'm personally just not really interested in writing that kind of like keep on the borderland style stuff. Nothing against it. It just isn't where my imagination goes really. And I think I felt like if I was doing it, it would feel like a pastiche, or I'd just be tempted to keep making it weirder until it was like unrecognizable anyway. But yeah, stuff like pocket dimensions, or like as in the Shrike is like it's explicitly like it's in the afterlife. Although even that is kind of making assumptions about what's going on in this fantasy world. But yeah, it's intended as like a kind of pocket dimension trap that can be kind of remora like fastened onto other people's imaginary worlds, and it won't change things up too much in the kind of wider scheme of things. Was kind of the idea of it.
It is. There are like, because there is that default assumption that's kind of baked in, that kind of like cod medievalism, right? And like you said, with the
Mm,
Wild West undertones, it is one of the odd ones where, because there's like a default assumption, any slight deviation from that kind of gets amplified. Like even looking like a core rule set, if it makes like a couple of slight changes, it's like, damn, this like changes everything because everything ends up so tightly enmeshed. And it like, oh, okay, there's no plate armor, and I was like, okay, cool, like you even changed the entire context of the game now, because it's like, okay, that says a lot about like where everyone's at like technologically.
yeah, sure.
It like implies like a real, like maybe a lack of infrastructure to like develop that kind of technology or whatever, and to be able to make it, because like made to order in real life, right? Like it's fitted to the person. So it gets really noodly. I think that's like the only advantage of like the huge proliferation of rule sets, is like, well, at least I can hyper fixate on like the tiny little differences you've made and see what that does. Or even things like, oh man, what was it? I can't remember her name now, but she has this really good blog post where it's like pretty cool setting, and at the end it just drops the line of like, oh, in this game initiative is based on morale, and like the more, if you have more ways to scare your opponent than they do you go first in the initiative, and like that's like
Okay,
a
that's
rules
fun.
change, but it changes everything about the game. Like, damn, you've implied so much about the setting, because I just need to scare you, so we do like a cool war dance and we all wear fucked up masks, and it's like immediately
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I
overload
never
so
heard that
much.
one.
Yeah, it rocks. I'm so angry. It's so good.
Yeah, it's so simple as well. No, I agree with you. I love that. But yeah, I guess actually on the subject of card medievalism on like setting, but Luke, as you know, the thing that you've written that I like the most is Wolves Upon the Coast, which is I mean, I don't know how to describe it. It's a kind of ground up reimagining of OD&D, and also a whole setting and hex crawl that goes with the rules. And there's a monster book as well, but like they all kind of talk to each other in really interesting ways. But I mention it only because like I think you did something really interesting with that one where to me, like you did stick to, forgive me, I don't know the way to say it, but like in a way what should be quite generic D&D isms by now, right? Like it's quite a limited monster palette, and it is this like medieval world, but you managed to make it feel completely alien and like unlike anything else that I've read from the OSR either. Like, do you have any thoughts on like how does he do it? Like, how did I don't know, or how did you go about what I assume was quite consciously transforming that kind of familiar like milieu into something that felt kind of alien?
I feel like I spent a lot of time asking people, why are you such a genius? But
um,
can we get the title? I just wanted to make sure it was Wolves Upon the Coast, right?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the
Please
one.
continue.
Yeah.
Tell us all about it.
So the Wolves is a weird book project, I guess, because it's made of like smaller parts. So it started
Mm,
with the monster rewrite project, where I was like, okay, I'm going to go through delving deeper which is just an OD&D retro clone. I mean, it's in my opinion the best one, but it's a good one. Took all the monsters from that list, and I was like, okay, like assuming that I can't add monsters, assuming I have to use these, how do I make them all like actually interesting, engaging, both to read and to run? And how do I like recontextualize them? Because there's not much in those really early descriptions. Like you get a little bit about social organization, a very basic like graphic description. That's it. There's a lot less craft associated with a lot of them. There's not like, because you know it's 1974. Like an orc is it's one of those Tolkien things, and that's about it. That's all you've got. So starting kind of trying to hit it from like, I've got the name and the basic description, and then I modify that. So do the monsters, start as a blog project, turn into a little book. The very annoyingly titled Volume 2 Monsters and.
Look, I went all over looking for Volume 1, and I
so many people did.
I couldn't find it anywhere. I was like, what's he doing? Like,
it's so good. I have another one where I made up an RPG and I wrote a review for an RPG that doesn't exist, and there's a few people who still think it exists and will email me occasionally.
Shit, I forgot that was yours. Sorry to detour. What was that one about again? Because that was such a fun one, and I can't remember what it's about specifically.
That one was the one where you play as like a spy or like an internal secret police agency.
Yes, that was it. I want to play that game, man. I loved it. Like,
yeah, well, the plan was to get someone else to write it for me, but it's not worked yet. So then I was like, okay, cool. So there's definitely a theme here with these monsters because they were written around the same sort of time, and I just really got into Beowulf at the time. So I think some of that bled through. Where that really bled through was when I was working on the sequel, like the sort of the companion, which was and treasure, because it's the second half of the OD&D booklet. Another annoying title. People hate that one. So that one was, again, I'm going to try. That one deviated a bit more, but it started off as like, I'm going to take the default OD&D magic items and make them good because they're kind of boring. I mean, because as game pieces, they're pretty cool and interesting. Like a friend of mine has a whole thing with like a +1 magic sword is really cool because you're the one who gets to determine what its legacy is, which is like a fun way of thinking about it rather than it coming prepackaged. But also, I really like having that big kind of implied setting on all the history. It was not even implied; it's just the setting presented through, it's the Dark Souls approach, right? Where it's like you get a little snippet about where it came from or whatever. So whilst I was working on the magic items, I should do like a OD&D retro clone to go with this to kind of bring it all together. So I did like the basic rules, and I was like, okay, I've kind of ended up with this kind of like pseudo Anglo-Saxon kind of vibe with some of what I've written here. So let's like lean in on that. I got to the part where there's like here's how you generate a hex crawl. I was looking at OD&D. I was like, I don't want to retype the same thing, that everything else has been tweaked and changed a bit. It's like, what if I just write saying? Well, I just do the hex crawl, and then it became really big. So it's just because I didn't want to reinvent the wheel. So instead, I invented a whole new wheel. But it was fun to, unless I had a really good reason, I had to use magic items from the stuff I'd already done. I had to use the monsters from what I've already done. And I think, because one thing I found, this can happen in Call of Cthulhu as well, but especially in D&D, you kind of end up doing like monster safari, where there's like, okay, this is the monster we're looking at and murdering this week.
Yeah.
And next week there's a different one. And that's like fun and cool and like everything's novel, but it also means you don't get that kind of like layered relationship with what you're dealing with. And it's not like, oh, okay, well, like these guys again. Is like, for me, that's a great moment where it's like, okay, we've dealt with them before, but the relationship's changed or it hasn't, and that's still interesting. So a big part of Wolves was like, okay, let's like go all in on that. And it's kind of how the same things can crop up differently based on like regional context. There's like trolls, for example. So in the setting of Wolves, trolls are people who they pull out all their teeth, replace them with bits of glass. They pull out their nails, replace them with bits of glass, so they can heal because they're always injured. So they're always in the process of healing, which is how they heal up, because that's what trolls do, right? And then there's two main locations where you find trolls, and in one of them, trolls are like the worst kind of like pirates, basically, where like they've left, like as it keeps saying in the Monsters book, like they left humanity behind in pursuit of power, and they become these like horrible reavers that go off from society and do awful things. And then there's a different area on the map, like way down south from there, where instead it's kind of like a pro-social, like self-sacrifice, where it's like you become a troll to guard your community. And like they're the same monster. Mechanically, they work the same. The process of how they get there is the same, but because of the social context, they're totally different, which I think is really fun to play with. Because then as well, when you set that up as like the main way of doing things, when there are monsters that don't do that and they are always the same, that then becomes more interesting because it's like, oh, you've shown that they aren't always the same. So when they are, that also means something. So you're trying to just like overload everything with meaning was the thinking there. And a lot of this, like, I try not to think about it too deliberately in the writing process. I kind of just try and like see what's going to be there and just write that without thinking about it too much. And then after the fact, I'll go over and do the more like big brain design pass. Like, oh, okay, there's this thing that's evolved in the writing. How do I heighten that? Or this kind of went off the rails. Let's cut it and redo it. But there's definitely that kind of like trying to do it intuitively on the first pass. Just kind of letting the book guide you. Like there's the whole in the monsters book. There's like goblins, which are like the children from destroyed cities, and hobgoblins, which are eternal soldiers who destroy cities. I did not clock that when I was writing those. I realized afterwards, and they're even on facing pages. And I was like, oh, these in communication, like these are in conversation. Damn, that's really clever. I wish I'd spotted that at the time. Wolves was it was really fun. I mean, it was also written over a long time, so that helps with like.
I just want to shout out that troll thing is brilliant.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm really happy with the trolls. The monsters and wolves are really fun, I think.
Yeah, I as Luke said, I think one of the many things I love in wolves is that almost all of the monstrous monsters, not all of them, but a lot of them were people once, and they transformed themselves through magic into these things for different reasons. And like you said, they can have different motivations for becoming the same creature. And like the Sphinx ones, I love the like flayed like poets with like, how do they make the wings? Is it like their skin or something? It's so horrible.
Something awful like that, yeah.
Yeah, it's just disgusting. And the Minotaur like part had people. I could go on about this for ages actually, but yeah, I would say Wolves is like one of my favorite OSR settings, and I particularly love it just because, like you said, you not only give you all these like little ideas with the monsters and the magic items, but you then like created this whole extremely gameable, like enormous world in which they all play like a specific role, and they, you can find them all in like different contexts, like you said, and it's more than just like, oh, here's this idea. It's then like, oh well, I'm going to put it into practice like this way, and for me, that's kind of the gold standard of like, it's not just like having an idea or like whatever, it's kind of putting it into the world and like showing you how it's going to be encountered. I was talking about settings. One rather infamous book that I definitely think was a influence on Wolves, right, is Carcosa, which was originally for OD&D, right? It's not, and there's Lamentations. Because you've written about that as well, because Carcosa, for those who aren't aware, I mean, I think it's most famous for the obviously extremely controversial and unpleasant like magic rituals in the book, but
lots of human sacrifice, right?
Yeah, and sexual violence and stuff like that. It's pretty it's pretty clinical and weird with its descriptions of it in the kind of anyway. Which I think rightly tends to dominate conversation about it. But I think Carcosa is, dare I say it, like kind of mad brilliance too, in that it like completely warps and like inverts a lot of what you expect from like OD&D in its original incarnation. But like Wolves kind of then puts it into practice in this like huge kind of hex crawl in a way that I found really compelling when I read it. Even though I'm never going to run it for anybody because that I don't have any group that would enjoy it, but like creatively I like admired the totality of the vision, and the way that, like you said, the changing stuff like the magic user, like the magic users in Carcosa are not wizards, they're sorcerers. And all of the rituals that they can do are kind of where the controversy comes in. But I think more interestingly for me, gameplay-wise, they're all linked to specific locations or like objects in this huge hex crawl. So learning magic becomes not in Carcosa, and then in Wolves too, because with a less kind of controversial spell list. But like the important thing is that in Carcosa, like learning magic becomes about understanding the fictional world, like very kind of in great depth, right? Like you need to visit all the places and like find all the stuff before you and learning any kind of new ritual involves lots of traveling and like adventuring in order to get it to work, basically.
I think a lot of it's the process of like de-abstraction, because like there's the whole like
Yeah,
rules allied thing, like games rules, abstract ideas, like okay, we don't care, we'll abstract it, whatever. Wizards just learn spells and they level up because we're going to hand wave all the research they do. It's like,
yeah,
well,
sure.
what if we make that gameplay, right? Like, and yeah,
Mm.
you're right, Carcosa has a huge impact. Like, I still think it's got one of the best hex crawls ever written, which is just like 582 jungle ants, full stop. That's it. That's all you get. Like, you read that and you're like, holy, that's an entire adventure. Like, what does that look like? Like, do you encounter them all at once? Do you just like find the scouts? Like, it's a crazy thing to just put in a hex field. That's it. That's all you get. But yeah, I think it's the process of taking and it's the same with treasure tables are great. They're really useful for when you're making stuff. But like, if I want to play right now, pre-roll it for me, and like I'm like, okay, cool. What does the evil wizard have? Okay, he's got this magic item and this one, and he's got these coins, whatever. And yeah, it's something very interesting happens when you take the things that are usually abstracted away and instead make them concrete and make them a part of play. And I think it's fun. I think it's fun to play with where the lens sits, and there's something really fun about like zooming all the way in. It's like, okay, there's almost no abstraction. Like the only abstraction that exists are the ones that are useful for playing the game right now. Anything else we're playing out. Like, or then you've got other stuff where it's like some people love like a big downtime system, and that abstracts all of that away. Where it's like, oh, like we just roll some dice, we see what happens, and that can also be really fun because it can give like interesting unintended outcomes, like the carousing tables, the OSR classic, where it's like, okay, you go on the piss and what happens, and you don't make choices as a player, but you get to roll a bunch of dice, and that's fun as well, right? Because you've said, okay, I'm going to hand wave and abstract out all the decision making, and instead it's kind of giving the feel of a big crazy night out rather than playing that out in exhaustive detail. And like both are good, it's just they're good in different ways at different points, right? I think that's part of like why I'm so attracted to like adventure writing as well, because like adventures are almost all concrete. It's all stuff that's there, and settings are all stuff that's there. Whereas like when you're writing rules, it's kind of like you're building a little machine that outputs something. Whereas when you're writing an adventure or setting, you've got the thing. Like you don't need the machine because I've given you the output, and you can just go and use the output rather than running through the machine. And it's what there's also like something like, again, Carcosa, just because we were talking about it, like really minimal hex fills. Like most of those like one or two sentences, which are really inspiring and really interesting. Because again, like 580 jungle ants, cool. Or like, oh, there's this many dudes in this village, and you have to work out from context what's going on with them. Versus something again like wolves, where it's okay, here's like the main dude that you talk to, and here's the problem they're having, and it's a bit more like here's the shit, like here's what you need to run. But then you kind of focus more on, okay, how does that impact everything else around you, rather than putting the emphasis on you, the GM, coming up with that extra stuff.
Yeah, it's I know you mean like Carcosa has like the kind of oldest of old school like don't counter design where it's like it's very clinical and kind of like you said there's no description of how it's all logistical almost like there's no description of how you're intended to feel about any of this or like what's happening or like any personality to any of it and I think most modern readers like expect that kind of stuff and bounce off the I'm slightly less enamored of the hundreds of jungle ants school of design than you are, I think. But like I do admit that it has a certain economy with like the amount the amount of potential gameplay you could get out of that is actually quite high. But I think a lot of people now kind of want a little bit more from the hex descriptions.
Yeah, well, because like you can run that in the worst way possible. There's a degree of like trust given.
Roll initiative.
Yeah, because it's like, okay, you encounter them on the road. Like, fuck me. Like, it's I've seen this with encounter tables actually, where some people will do an encounter table that's like the full encounter and have loads of cool, gribbly little like tactical details and like, oh, and his wife's cheating on him and he's angry about that, and you've got the whole thing, and like each encounter's like a page or whatever, and like you can run that encounter once, and that's cool and good, and you as the GM will have a good time because it's like delivered the whole thing, versus like, okay, you roll and there's 2d20 bandits, and then you roll for how far away they are and whether you're surprised. And it's like, okay, I have to do a lot more work as a GM to make that good. And some of that is practice and training. Like you just run a lot of games and you get good at that sort of thing. But there's like the infinity of when it's sparse, you can run the same dice results 100 different ways versus there's like the immediate utility of, okay, like this guy's wife cheating on him versus, okay, there's a guy and like he's angry and that's all you have and you have to pull the rest of it together. And it's really interesting. It's like the oracular nature of dice, right? Where it's depending on your mood, you're going to interpret those results super differently, which is interesting, but it's skill heavy.
Yeah, it's I agree with you about the skill part. I think I can enjoy both of them in different ways. Like you said, I do appreciate like if you've got a really specific idea, I think I'd like you to give it to me. But then I also agree that like you kind of can't really beat the like D100 bandits or whatever for for the range of experiences that could potentially give you. Like if you're willing to really drill down on it, like you could sustain a lot of encounters from that kind of like spread, right? And it's very economical, like it's very economical word wise and with conceptually, I think, which is always interesting.
Yeah, I think you were going to say something, sorry, Ben.
I was going to interrupt to read the first page of the introduction from Carcosa, but perhaps the conversation has moved past it.
Ah, fair enough. Yeah, it's I think very rightly controversial because there is some very nasty stuff in that book, but it is.
Yeah, I just want to say, for everyone listening, Luke endorses everything in the book.
No, that's not true. That is very not true. You can't be doing this.
He's told me that he endorses it and that he's glad that it exists.
With our haircuts, Leo, we can't be taking risks. Come on, man.
Star Wars stole shots from Triumph of the Will. There's no like it's true. I mean, I will show like I teach junior high, and we will watch segments of Triumph of the Will when we're doing World War II. And then I'll pull up Star Wars, and they'll do the side-by-side thing on YouTube, and the kids are like, "What is happening here? Why did George Lucas steal shots from these Nazi films?" And it's just, well, Leni Riefenstahl had a really good eye, and George Lucas just stole it and put it in his movie. And so there is, whatever the dubious nature of the inspiration, whatever you get from it.
Yeah. There is also something kind of like, you're almost like liberating the good thing from a bad thing. Like, it's like, oh, like, I don't like this person or whatever. Not like a specific one, just in general. You'd be like, oh, I'm going to take the thing that like the bad person did and make it my own. And that's kind of something.
No, I agree. And what's good and interesting about Carcosa is not the controversial stuff, which I think is quite rightfully left in the rearview mirror. But like you said, rather to me, I thought like very original and interesting, like totality that it took to the magic and linking it into the world itself, and the kind of the engine of play that it resulted from that. I thought was really interesting. Yeah, and sure. And I also have to say I think done better in Wolves. I like it more, but it's worth talking about, definitely.
I think I do feel like sometimes there is like there's a bit of a movement towards these kind of like all-in-one products now, where it is, or say like projects, where it is like, okay, like this is the whole thing. Like you can just take this and kind of run with it, which is interesting. Like we've moved away from some of the like very, not entirely, but like there was in the early OSR stuff, there was a big emphasis on like, oh, you can generate stuff from this, and it's like a toolkit to make it your own. And I think more and more we're seeing people like, no, here's like the thing. Like I've done the work. You can just use the thing. It's all done for you. And like you're always going to bring the interpretation to it because you're running the game. But it's an interesting move away from the more generation heavy kind of books.
Yeah, which I guess I am known for the dice table kind of like setting generation, which I think I'm sort of in more two minds over than I was when I got into this, because like I came from kind of being annoyed about writing novels and wanting to do the exact opposite. and that incredibly I don't know, we call it like procedural versus authored maybe, but like that incredibly procedural way of like generating stuff really interested me. And I was really into like roguelikes and kind of like trying to do the same thing with the dice and like I'm obviously very happy with the work that I've done on it. But I'm always interested because like there's always this thing kind of plaguing me as well where I'm like, well, alternatively, what if I just give you like the one thing that I was thinking about? It's an interesting kind of like balancing act, I think.
Well, Vaarn, I think, is interesting because of the nature of the setting. Like the tables feel specific to the setting. Like there's nothing,
Yeah.
there's very few entries that are all like, oh, that's obvious. Do you know what I mean? It's always like, oh, that like tells me something, and there is kind of the like roll tables are a way of sometimes condensing a whole bunch of paragraphs about stuff that exists. Like because it's on the table, it could exist, and that's
Yeah.
really interesting. Where it's like, oh, okay, like, and this is like a similar thing in the work that always gets compared between us. That's a Death Fantasy, where it is like, oh, like the water slug guys exist. Like, okay, cool. That like even if I never rolled one, the fact that I know they exist now like recontextualizes the whole thing, and there is that kind of like letting the connective tissue not be explicit, but it's still there, and you can tell it's still there. And I think that's really interesting. I think that's why that approach can be really strong as well, because it's economical, like you say.
Yeah, I think I guess I think if there's any takeaway from it in my theory of this is that like absolutely everything in the game is world building, even the bits that because I think people maybe there's like some people might be thinking, oh well, world building is like the paragraph where I tell you about what the gods are like, and that's the world building. And I would say number one, you don't need that, but also like you said, everything is world building. Like the rule that you talked about with morale being like initiative, that's world building. Like that tells you me that like everyone's going to be trying to scare each other and have like intimidation tactics, whatever those are. So like if you're writing a game or an adventure or a system or whatever you're doing, like absolutely everything that you're putting into it is going to imply something about the setting. Even stuff like the names of the ability scores in D&D, like it implies something about what's considered important or like notable about an adventurer, right? Like it's a
That's like the saving throw names,
those are
like
great. Yeah, those are very
yeah.
evocative. Yeah.
And like it is funny because they're so specific, you end up with some shit that gets really contorted. Like I guess it's paralysis because rocks are involved, and that's like stone, and it's like sure, okay, I guess. Yeah, I think it's a trick that I've seen people miss. Where it's like, oh, I won't just use an equipment list from your favorite games. And if you give me the equipment list because there's so much in there about the
Yeah, no, agreed. Like, tell me your specific understanding of what people are going to be carrying because that says loads. Yeah, like
big time.
Possibly just as much as like the paragraph that you've written about like the Welsh government or whatever. Like, yeah. I think
it's the trying to like focus it on like the where like the kind of rubber meets the road, and then you can leave all of the high level stuff implied because like the car's still driving the rubber, but I only need the rubber right now, and I can think about the rest of it and work it out backwards.
Well, yeah, I agree. Is there another thing that I guess I don't know if anyone's looking to us for advice or whatever, but I think you'd sign off on this too, is that world building is also best located within things that are directly concrete and like actionable by the players. So like equipment list, like we said, fantastic. Like that tells me loads about both my character, the ways they're going to interact with the world, and like you said, it might tell me something pretty interesting. I'm like, my equipment is like a sword and then a squid in a bottle. I'm like, okay, is that something that people carry around? Like, why? What does it do? Is it like, am I hunting does this thing help me out? Am I going to eat it? Like, I don't know,
Big time. It's the same with like trinket tables as well. The trinket tables are like very laser focused on this is the shit your character carries. But then you get the interesting one of like, well, am I weird for like carrying a squid in a bottle? Because there's like the way you put that squid in the bottle does a huge amount. Because it's okay, my guy's weird and he has a squid in the bottle. I guess he prays to it. Versus, I can buy that down the shop. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Like,
or it's considered a tool. It goes into the locks and like opens them or something. I don't know. Like.
Yeah. Damn, I want the squid lock picks now.
Yeah. Same. Yeah, but like I think that's definitely something we would agree on is like world building within the actionable details is generally more interesting and will 100% be engaged with by players, which is like the important thing, I think.
Yeah, because it's when you ground like the world building and like some of those tactical micro decisions, it becomes huge. Like, and this is the thing that roguelikes are really good at. Like, Card's really good at this. Was like, oh, you're wearing the bloody neck ring. Oh, the butcher apes like you more. Like, if you could do that in a tabletop setting easily and organically, that's huge because it's like everything, like the clothes everyone wears, like it says something, right? Like it's
I've been working on this with Vaarn theory, where like things can have like tags. They're just called tags, but they're just descriptors. But rather, with a lot of the more common ones, they don't do anything except like increase trade value with various cultures. So like if you have stuff made out of bone, then like ghouls want it, and they'll trade for you better, or they might like you more, and like the hyena people like spiky things, and they want like armor that's covered in spikes because that's kind of their vibe. Which again, it completely like ripped off from Card, like half the stuff that I do. But it's a fun like I agree that it's a fun way of bringing people more into the world if like you're able to kind of execute on it. Definitely.
Yeah, you can point at something concrete, and it's also it means if the player can remind the GM of a cultural trait, it's like wait no, because it says here that they like this thing. And, oh shit, yeah, good point. Because I like try and like play very like collaboratively with the players, not in the
definitely.
Oh, what's the name of the town, but more in the like they can remind me of things. I'm like that's true.
Yes.
I always remember I ran Knights Black Agents for a couple of years. We used Google Maps because you had all the 2008 Google Maps data, and they were going to hit an airport or something, and someone was like, "Wait, there's a cop. There's like there's a police station like right nearby." So it's like, "Oh shit, now we have to change the entire plan because they spotted that." And that's like, obviously, it's Google Maps. It's far richer than something we can come up with, but it's that the players spotting things in the world and that immediately changing the context. It's like really interesting stuff, and then not being like teacher we had homework, being like, "Oh wait, the situation's even more interesting than we realized." Like it's really good.
Yeah, that's fun. That's good play on their part, definitely.
Gentlemen, our time is running short, so I'm gonna interrupt for a last quick question, and then asking you how our audience can support your work. So, I can't tell you how amazing that listening to you two has been. I'd love to have you both on together or separately with other people at some point. But let me close with this question. What is your favorite imaginary world or top few favorite imaginary worlds?
No. That's a tough one. I was going
to say for me, I would go either Middle Earth or Lovecraft. Those would be my two favorites, I think.
I was going to say like the early Games Workshop takes on the Warhammer 40,000 stuff is pretty sick. Like when it was
fun, yeah.
A little more like because I grew up reading that book, and it's like everything in it's so cool, and it's a lot meaner than like modern 40k, and it kind of knows that like the Empire's the bad guys, lol. Where it's like Marines are like these dudes who they just pick them up off the streets as like street gangs and like brainwash them to be the super soldiers. Like damn, that's cool as hell. Definitely didn't leave any marks on young me. Yeah, that's definitely
you're just like please can I get picked up to be the super soldier? No one's ever gonna disrespect me again after I've been pumped full of like emperor hormones. Interestingly, I also reach back to childhood for my absolute favorites, but one of them has got to be the Edge Chronicles, illustrated by Chris Riddell. I can't remember the author's name, irritatingly, but they're like middle grade books popular in the UK. But it's set on like the whole world is like this giant cliff edge with a river running off it, and it's full of just absolutely wild like monsters and like people. And they have these kind of flying ships that they fly around with these like things called flight rocks that rise when they're hot. It's both whimsical and like absolutely terrifying. It has these horrible, horrible monsters in it, all lovingly illustrated. And I think would A, make a great OSR setting, and B, just kind of definitely indelibly scarred me and made me the person who I am today. So I would say the Edge and the Deep Woods, basically.
Wow. Okay, I'll hunt that down because I'm totally unfamiliar with it, but that was a very compelling description.
It's absolutely awesome.
Cover.
Which one?
It's got like an ogre on the front cover. It's like him and all of his mates.
Yeah, maybe.
I think I've read that.
Very distinctive illustrations. Yeah, there's a creature called the Gloam Glozer that terrified me as a kid.
Yes.
Yeah, the Curse of the Gloam Glozer. It's like it's this shapeshifter that they make out of stuff. I'll stop rambling, but yeah, it's surprisingly dark for a kids series and really really good.
Well, then I'll follow up with Leo. How can people best support your work? Is it Vaults of Vaarn or what?
Yeah, I mean, my main ongoing thing is Vaults of Vaarn. There's a crowdfunder going on, which will have ended by the time this comes out, I think. But yeah, if you go to vaultsofvaarn.com, there's all kinds of links to my work and stuff. And most importantly, loads of stuff you can read for free as well. I'm generous. I'm open-handed. Like you can read a lot of stuff.
And can you give me a brief pitch of Vaults of Vaarn, just in case there's someone listening who doesn't know it?
Oh god, yeah, I totally forgot to do this. Yeah, Vaults of Vaarn is a science fantasy role-playing, it's kind of OSR style role-playing game set in a giant blue desert at the end of time. And it's very heavily kind of procedurally generated, so random characters, random weapons, random settlements. All of this stuff is done with kind of dice drop. Yeah, and it's funding at the minute. It's done really well, so I actually don't have to beg you to back it, but it's like thousands of people can't be wrong. It's going to be good. I think I'm very excited about the second edition book, so I'm feeling pretty pleased.
So, Luke, I do have to ask before whatever you want to plug. What's it like when you and Sean McCoy get on the horn together? Is it just like brilliance flaring transatlantically constantly?
He just tells me off for writing in full sentences most. No, it's good. It's really fun.
Release the gradient descent paragraph cut. That's what we want to see. Release the gearing cut.
Yeah, one day. No, it's good. It's fun.
Okay, well, great. Then tell me about how our audience can best support your work.
Yeah, buy Mothership. Just buy Mothership stuff. That's like the big one. And then there's like the Itch, where you can get Wolves on the Coast and some other little bits and pieces I've done, or buy the books from Elsonia. A lot of it's on royalties, so buy something with my name on it mostly.
Okay. Cool. I want to say you did an adventure for Salvage Union. I just picked up Salvage Union, so
people seem to like that one. We were in London the other week, and my wife found that in the nerd shop we went into, and she's like, "Oh my god," because she'd not seen something with my name on before. She lost a little mind. It's very cute.
That's amazing. I guess I will close by I had someone email me and tell me that they found the podcast but were unaware that I had written a book. So I guess I should talk about that. I wrote a book called Slaying the Dragon, A Secret History of Dungeons and Dragons, which explains how TSR, the first company to make D&D, went out of business in the 1990s, why it went out of business, and how D&D was saved by rival company Wizards of the Coast. I am working on a sequel volume now, tentatively titled Total Party Kill, The Battle for the Soul of D&D in the 21st Century. I have no idea when that will be done or out, but I am working on it. I'm getting up at 5 a.m. every morning to work on it, so it is a thing that is happening now. But you can buy my book in the USA, anywhere. In the UK, I believe it's on Kindle, and that might be it in the UK. But, gentlemen, this has been, given how early it is in the morning, I really enjoyed this. It really sparked my imagination. I took some notes. I have lots of things to think about. So thank you so much. This has been amazing.
Thank you. Sorry about your early start.
Oh, this was so worth it, guys.
Glad to hear, mate.
All right. Well, you both have a tremendous afternoon, and I'm going to go have a great morning.
All right. have fun with the children
I will.
at school. So it's gonna be good.
Bye-bye.
Bye, folks.